Welcome to K103's Tetewathá Talk Show. I'm your host for today, Jessica Erstreich. I'm sitting in for Luann Stacy. I hope she's having a wonderful Friday. And today is MCK Friday. Our guest today is Chief Kahsennehawe Sky-Deer. Welcome to the show.
Kahnawà, Jessica.
It's great to have you here. So we have a whole list of things we want to talk about. I think probably the most current thing is the Collective Impact Open House that's going on right now at the Knights of Columbus.
Correct. So today is the last day. It's going to be open until 7 p.m. This evening, and I would encourage all Kahnawake to, make your way over there and see what's going on. I'm a part of the Collective Impact working group, and basically what Collective Impact is looking at how, changes could be made in Kahnawake in different areas. And when the launch was held in 2017, community members from right across all factions, age groups, everything you name it was invited to participate, and everybody looked at where are we at in the community, what do we want to see for our future. And I think there was 33 priorities that were identified, or that became areas of
33. That's a lot of areas
exactly
that need to be addressed.
So what the working group did was it was whittled down into themes, and from those themes an area or a priority was developed. So what's at the Knights of Columbus today is the 6 priorities, and what we're asking community is to go and choose which 3 most resonates with you as an individual. Where does your passion lie? What do you see, for your future and maybe for your family that you think is the most important? So when you go and you sit with, I'm a facilitator actually for language and culture mentorship, myself and Ietsénhaienhs and this was our focus as being part of the working group. And you basically sit and hear the presentation of what the priority is. And then after that, after sitting at all 6 booths, you go and you make your choice. And the thing is, I don't feel like any one trumps the other or is more important. It's just what resonates with you as a community member and being here in Kahnawake. And
oh, sorry,
go
on.
No, go ahead.
Just wondering, how long are each of these presentations for people who, maybe they just want to slide in during lunch hour or right after work?
You don't even necessarily have to sit through a presentation. I mean, you could just do a walk around, read. There's a lot of pamphlets and information that is handed out that you could read on your own time. And so there's no requirement to sit through presentations, but it's really cute the way they have set up. Like there's little fires almost, if you will, and you sit in a circle, and then there's a nice big poster board. But the whole atmosphere and ambiance in there is there's food, Messy Kitchen is there, interacting with different community members, hearing their perspectives, their ideas, and just that sense of community and having a say in the direction we're going. And there was a lot of questions asked, well, are these 6 it? And I said no. And even after the 3 are decided upon, it means that in the next little while, that's where the focus of collective impact will be. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the other 3 fall to the wayside, because other community members might feel I want to pick that up. There's food sovereignty, there's the Kahnawake vision statement, health, holistic wellness. So there's different areas that, it might be more important for you to focus your time and energy trying to help to see that through.
So what's the hope? What do you guys hope the outcome will be of the open house?
Well, for people to get a better understanding, first and foremost, what is collective impact? Why do we need to have change? Or why are we trying to address areas where maybe we're not looking at as a community right now? So for community to come out and, as I mentioned, look at the priorities that have been developed and to choose the ones that they want to see, as I mentioned, in the next little while, a majority of resources to be focused in that area.
Okay. And for people who, it's Friday, right? So people probably have their kids. Maybe they still want to go, after pick up the kids from school, finish work. Is it kind of kid friendly?
As a matter of fact, there's a play area so that you can if you want to, leave your child and allow them to play while you go and do the engagement or get the information that you want. They also have a baby changing station, so there's a lot going on. And I just want to encourage, if you haven't got there yet, and one of the suggestions I got, which I haven't shared with the facilitators yet, is that maybe beyond today, that we could keep the display open, maybe at the Collective Impact office, which is the old Body Contours building. For the people who didn't get a chance yesterday and today to get there, that maybe we expand it for like another week or so, just so that people, because you know how it is in town. If you're not paying attention, you're not listening to the radio at this moment.
To miss things.
Exactly,
really
so that they could still have their voice heard and pick which priority that they would like to see proceed.
Do you guys have a minimum number of people you'd like to see picking their top 3 priorities?
No, I don't think we set a threshold or anything like that. It's an open house, means whoever shows up is going to show up. But I'm pretty satisfied so far with the level of participation and all different age groups that have come in and sat down and talked to myself specifically. I was there yesterday from 1 to 5, and I was there this morning from 9 till noon. I'll probably make my way back to go and take off my facilitator hat and go as a community member, and also listen and weigh in on my personal views too,
Okay. Do you have an estimate right now of how many people have come through the open house?
Oh, I should have asked that question before I left, but if I had to estimate, I would probably say around 300.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, definitely. Because like I said, it's open until 8 p.m. Well, last night was till 8 p.m. Tonight's till 7. So people still have an opportunity after work hours to stop in. And like I said, there's no requirement. You could really be in and out of there in 15 minutes if you wanted to. But others have said, wow, like I'm really enjoying the engagement and, talking to people and hearing what's happening in Kahnawake and what could happen in the future. I'm really taking my time and going from each individual, I don't know if I want to call it a booth or a station, but, to each of the priorities. So.
Okay. For people who might not be familiar with what some of the priorities are, maybe they haven't seen some of the posters, can you give us an idea of what the priorities are, what those mean for Kahnawake? Like, some people might not be really familiar with the idea of food sustainability.
Okay, well, there's 6 of them. Okay. There's 6 priorities. So you go in, and it's almost like a walkthrough, and it's very like a natural setting. Like, there's a lot of trees, and it's the way they set up. It's really cool. It's something to experience, and so I believe the first one deals with holistic and well-being. There's one that deals with the Kahnawake vision statement. There's the one that I was facilitating, which is a language and culture mentorship program. There's one about early childhood and mothers and babies. So there's 6, and so overall, in terms of, like I mentioned, there was 33 original, and then they got broken into themes, but these are the 6 areas that have been developed.
They're sort of like overarching, sort of like umbrella themes.
No, they're actual like priorities. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back in just a few moments. And we're going to continue on with our MCK Friday. For those of you just tuning in, our guest today is Chief Kahsennehawe Sky-Deer. I'm your fill-in host today, Jessica Erstreich. I'm filling in for Luann, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. And we're back on K103's Tetewathá Talk Show. It is MCK Friday. Our guest today is Chief Kahsennehawe Sky-Deer, and we started the show off by discussing the Collective Impact Open House. It's going on right now at the Knights of Columbus. Any last reminders for our listeners regarding the open house?
No, just, encouragement, as I mentioned at the top of the show, to, go check it out. It could be a really quick in and out, and, it's really inspirational, I think, to see the community members who have, dedicated their time to do this kind of work on behalf of the community, and, just show your support for what we're trying to do for our future.
It's really inspiring. I think for a lot of people who maybe they had heard about collective impact when it first happened, there was the first meeting, there was a lot of positive movement.
A lot of hype.
Yeah, and I don't think it was misplaced hype. I think this is a great, show of what's been going on for anybody who's curious and still wants to be involved in some way.
So you have till 7 p.m. tonight. Get to the Knights of Columbus.
And there's food, right?
Yes. Messy Kitchen is there. A lot of snacks and refreshments.
Yeah. The dishes you don't have to wash are the best kind of dishes. All right. So last week, MCK put out a press release regarding the KKL. Can you update us on what that means, where that's going, what to expect?
Okay. So for many years in this community, the buzzword was membership. And a lot of people know that is one of the portfolios and areas of work I've been associated with for many years now. We're trying to get away from using the M word. It's now recognition, and it's no longer called the Kahnawake Membership Law. It's called KKL, or Kanien'kehá of Kahnawake Law. And we're actually ready to roll. I mean, for those who were aware of the fact that in 2007, the law kind of went into an abeyance because of the suspension of the Council of Elders. There was a entire amendment process that went through CDMP. The law was passed last year. The regulations are done. The registrar has been hired and trained, and applications are starting to be heard, and people will be starting to be put back on our Kahnawake Kanien'kehá registry.
So do you have like a timeline on when people can, I don't know, how is it going to work? They're going to be submitting application forms, where they're picking them up?
Yeah, we already did all that in June. We put out a notice to community to start picking up applications and to start getting their files ready, so that we knew that early fall or end of summer that, we were going to be ready to start hearing these applications. So yeah, they could be picked up at client-based services, which is at the back of the bank, past the hydro office in the corner. That is client-based services. That's where the office of the KKR is. Like I said, it was formerly known as the membership office. So we got to get used to using these new terminology.
Right. So for people who are, putting their files and their applications together, is it a lot of paperwork? What kind of background work do they need to do in terms of what do they need to collect on their behalf in order to submit these applications?
In terms of the detailed process that, I don't have all of that information. I mean, politically, I know the overriding process is now we're ready to roll.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of information already at the office. I mean, we have people's lineage going back to the 1700s, pretty much, thankfully, that, in terms of what needs to go into an application for KKR isn't as difficult, I would say, as for those people who are going to be applying for residency. If they come from other Ungwehue communities, they'll be more required to get information on their behalf.
More legwork on
than people who are from our community, who we pretty much have all of their background and their lineage. So I think it's just picking up an application. There's an application fee, and if actually I don't even think there's a requirement to do an interview.
Okay.
As before, there was
you had to go in front of
before the Council of Elders, and now there's only one person that is solely responsible for making decisions on these applications, and that's the registrar.
Okay. All right. So the hearing, the application, is it a matter of weeks? Do we know how long that whole process will take for somebody once they drop off their application?
I think it's a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
The ones that I'm aware of that were done last week, because there have already been two, to my understanding, that have been approved and will be, if the word is reinstated or instated or whatever their scenario is, I'm not familiar. They're going to be put on the KKR, and to my understanding, there's supposed to be public postings that go out as per the law. So yeah, that should all be forthcoming, and I'm really excited. I mean, there's been a lot of people who have been waiting a very long time for this, to get their recognition, to be able to exercise certain entitlements and benefits here in Kahnawake. So it's a long time overdue. I regretfully apologize for how long it's taken. But this law is the foundation of our, collective identity here in Kahnawake. Who is a part of us? Who is a part of the we? Who is our family? So understandably, it took time, and we had to really consider, how we were going about this. So
okay,
I'm just excited that we're at this juncture right now.
Okay, that's great news for the people who've been waiting.
Yep.
Right?
And if we could switch gears, I know a lot of people were familiar with the fact that in the last 8 months or so, myself and a working group were going around and educating the community about S3, which also has implications on our law here in the community, because there's still the Indian Act, there's still Canada deciding and dictating who is a Indian in Canada, and it clashes with our law and our ability to recognize who our people are, because they have this paternalistic view that their law supersedes ours and that they're going to decide who are Mohawks of Kahnawake. So recently, Bill S3, the final provisions that were proposed in the Senate passed. So that means that our fear, that we had about the potential numbers that could impact Kahnawake is going to happen. We know that now they've removed the second generation cutoff, the 1951, and that any woman who had ever lost their rights as a result of either marrying out, enfranchisement, whatever the case may be, dating back all the way to 1869, her descendants will now be entitled to registration. And I don't have a problem with, the federal government having to rectify the sexist discrimination that happened to women across this country. It's right what they're doing by, rectifying that. The issue I have is now that Canada is going to say, well, all these people now, if they are descendant of somebody, are going to be Mohawks of Kahnawake. And because we just went through this whole process of developing criteria and, of who could be a part of us, that, Canada's going to try to dictate and say, these are all your people now. If somebody left this community, in the 1920s or thereabouts and have no connection really to the community anymore. So it becomes problematic. We've been at the KCR table for, I want to say, almost 20 years now. MCK has, and trying to get them to see.
KCR, for those people who aren't familiar, stands for what?
Kahnawake-Canada relations.
Okay.
And trying to get the federal government to see things from our perspective and what we're trying to do here in the community when it comes to these mechanisms like recognition, like residency, like having a land regime of, who could own land in Kahnawake. Mm-hmm. So we've always been at the forefront of taking control of our destiny in Kahnawake. Recently, been working with Gerald Dayayage Alfred on a governance project and looking at a timeline they developed. And I told him, I said, you know what, we need to record this and show the community, because the community needs to see the evolution of Kahnawake from the 1920s when there was an Indian agent actually here in the community and, them dictating our affairs and how we're going to do things, to at some point Kahnawake just saying, you know what, we're more than capable of doing things for ourselves and taking control of the hospital, creating KSCS, taking control of education. All facets of our being here in this community are now, run and operated by Kahnawake people. Mm-hmm. So it's been a long-standing battle, I think, with the federal government to try to, push them and displace the way they foresee how things should operate. And these are the two areas now that we're still at odds. Membership, who could be a part of our community and who could own land in our community, because they feel like, as the federal government and as Indian affairs, that it's within their authority, according to the Indian Act, to decide these matters. And
so how does this tie in with we recently, like we were just talking about, having the, KKL in place and people starting to be able to submit applications to be enlisted there, and all of these potential new people who on the federal list would be added. Are those people going to be able to go through the KKL process? Is there any concern that you might just get flooded with applications? Or is it possible that it might not even come to that?
Well, I think people need to understand the difference first and foremost, that just because you get a letter from Canada saying that you're a Mohawk of Kahnawake according to their standards doesn't necessarily mean you will be recognized according to ours. That there's a real distinction there. So that's first and foremost, and why we were trying to educate people through that whole S3 engagement process with the community. Being Kanien'kehá, being a part of the Residency means more than just having a band card. And we're wary about people that just maybe want to capitalize off of our benefits and entitlements that, we get calls all the time at the office, I just got this card from the federal government that says I'm a Mohawk of Kahnawake, so now how do I get my free land? How do I get my education paid for? How do I get? And by the way, where is Kahnawake? So, like we said, for us, we're looking at the people who genuinely have connection to Kahnawake, who want to maybe reconnect because of what happened to their ancestor, that they've been displaced, from those who maybe just want to try to capitalize on this thing that's happening. And it's going to be far-reaching because the way we understand, as a result of S3, 1.2 million new Indians are going to be made.
And it could be as few as 30,000 added to Kahnawake registry to even more.
Yeah.
Right.
We were trying to get concrete numbers from the federal government to no avail. I mean, they have a demographer, but it's really hard, I guess, for them to give an exact figure, because now people who were registered as a 6'2" automatically become a 6'1", and therefore can pass on registration or status to their child, whereas before, if you were a 6'2", you couldn't pass it on. So it's so complicated the way Indian registration works, and that's why we're not promoting that. I mean, if people want to try to seek to get registered, that's their prerogative. We're trying to focus on our law in the community and who is eligible to be recognized as a Kanien'kehá of Kahnawake based on their lineage here.
Okay, so under the KKL, there's 3 different types of categories of residents. There's the Kanien'kehá of Kahnawake, there are approved Kahnawake residents, and permit holders.
You're mixing up the residency law.
It's mixed up? Okay.
Yeah. That is, and the residency law is passed, and that's another, I guess, mechanism that is going to be moving forward in the next little while. The law is passed, but we're in the process of developing the regulations for the residency law. So not to be mistaken with the KKL, the Kanien'kehá of Kahnawake law is for those people who meet the criteria, which is 4 out of 8 Ungwehunwe great-grandparents, 2 of which are Kanien'kehá of Kahnawake.
And does having the KKL separated from the residency law offer any sort of buffer or protection from what's going on with the S3 situation?
And that's the whole premise and reason why we did this. And because there was no enforcement mechanism for residency prior, with the whole law being in one. I know there's been a lot of frustration expressed in the last couple of years because of our lack of ability to have fair hearings in a court. So that was another reason why we said, okay, we'll separate the two, and we'll be able to allow a JP or somebody through the Court of Kahnawake to hear cases regarding residency and who is entitled to reside, and be able to, if necessary, order evictions.
Okay, so then who's going to be entitled to reside?
You want to get into the residency law?
If we have time, I don't know.
Okay.
Just because it is separate, so, but in a way, do they influence each other?
So people who don't meet the criteria of the KKR, we'll say that the Kahnawake Kanien'kehá Registry or the Kanien'kehá of Kahnawake law can be granted residency that's forever, because they have maybe 3 great-grandparents, they lived in the community all their lives, they were born here, their children are on the KKR. We know that those situations exist. So those are what is being called approved Kahnawake residents. It's like a one-time grandfathering in type thing, and they wouldn't ever have to reapply. But there's also responsibilities, to uphold, and that residency could be revoked upon breach of some of those responsibilities. And then there's also the permits. As you mentioned, there's humanitarian permits, education permits, work permits for people who might not be from our community, but who are from elsewhere. So those are the ones, as you mentioned, who would have to maybe do some of the background seeking of information about their ancestry and lineage, where they come from, and provide that as proof to be able to be eligible for residency.
Okay. For those of you just tuning in, it's MCK Friday right here on K103's Tetewathá Talk Show. Our guest today is MCK Chief Kahsennehawe Sky-Deer, and we've gone over a couple of topics. We've talked about collective impact, KKL, and the S3 situation. We are going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. And we're back on K103.7. This is the Tetewathá Talk Show. It's MCK Friday. Our guest today is MCK Chief Kahsennehawe Sky-Deer. I'm your guest host today, Jessica Erstreich. I'm filling in for Luann. She's out today. So we're just going to start going into the last part of the show. Do you have anything else that the community needs to know about the KCR membership situation and what's going on?
Yeah, early on in the year, we put out we created a website for all information regarding S3. So if there's still people out there who aren't familiar with the issue and the topic, there's a lot of information out there. It's www.kahnawake.com/S3. And, we did a lot of community engagement sessions. We did surveys. So everything pertaining to that could be found there. And the reason why we felt it was important, as I was just mentioning earlier in the show about the difference and the distinction between the Indian Act, the ban card, status, registration, all of that is in the ship, so to speak. If we wanted to look at this from a two-row approach, that's all there. That's all the colonial way that the federal government is trying to impose or controlling Indians. In Kahnawake, since 1981, we've started to create our own way of recognizing our people, and it's evolved over years. I mean, there used to be blood quantum, we had the moratorium on mixed marriages. To present day, now we have what we're calling the Kanien'kehá law, KKL. And we all have heard about the KKR or the registry, the Mohawk registry that we maintain. So there's 2 lists. Now, people need to understand that just because you're on the federal doesn't mean you're on the KKR, and that we're trying to revive this application process in our community of who our people are, and we're calling it recognition. So we're trying to get away from that terminology of membership that comes from the federal system. So, if people have questions, I know this topic is, it could be very confusing for a lot of people, and but what the good news is that now, after 12 years, our process is starting to move forward so that people can get their recognition and start to exercise benefits, entitlements of being a Kanien'kehá of Kahnawake here in our community. So that being put aside, we've talked about residency, that there's also a residency law that's going to govern who could reside in our territory, because we get people from all over the place that want to come and live here. There's going to be a requirement for people to get permits to reside here. And without being on KKR, without being an approved Kahnawake resident, and without having a permit, then people are technically residing in Kahnawake illegally. And now with the way the law is set up, and being able to have a court and a judge hear these matters, there's the ability for people to have a fair process to be heard about whether or not they could reside in the territory. And if it's found that they're in breach of the law, there is opportunity for forcible eviction. And that's coming in the next year because, like I said, the regulations need to be developed. Through our, and I'm going to shift gears now, through our Kahnawake-Canada relations, which is KCR, we've been at that table for 6 years trying to get the federal government to recognize Kahnawà:ke's jurisdiction and authority to exercise our, our right to determine who our people are. They're still of the opinion that they control, who is an Indian, who is registered as an Indian, and therefore they haven't separated registration and this term membership in their law. So for them, anybody that they register who can have an ancestor from Kahnawake, they'll say they're a Mohawk of Kahnawake, which clashes with our law and our criteria. So what we've been trying to do at that table is to get the federal government, Indian Affairs, to recognize our law, for it to supersede and for it to be paramount. Of course, that won't happen. In their eyes, Indian Act is the almighty and so forth. So we recently had a fallout with the new federal Indian Registrar, and that we put out a press release to the community that we were probably going to be stopping talks now at the Kahnawake-Canada Relations membership table because it's a waste of our time. And me personally, and with the support of the Grand Chief and Chief Clinton Phillips, who presides over lands, said, after 6 years of trying to get the federal government to put in what we called a stopgap measure of all the registrations to Kahnawake without having our say, we got so far, and recently we found out that things aren't proceeding the way we had been working on. So it was a kind of a blow, I guess, to us as a working group. And with all this S3 stuff coming, the protective measure that we thought we were getting put in place at that level is no longer. So in one of our press releases, we did say we were going to have a special community meeting upcoming to inform the community about how we view our next necessary steps to protect the community in light of S3. Because we know if 30 to 65,000 new people are registered as Mohawks of Kahnawake, you don't think that they're going to try to, exercise certain entitlements when it comes to, being a Kahnawake Hronu. And if they don't meet our criteria, then what? Are the court challenges going to continue? So I don't think Canada realizes the liability and the problems that this is going to create. Sure, you're rectifying sex-based discrimination, but at the same time, you're going to be creating even more problems. And just coming out of collective impact, and part of the presentation and the priority I was doing was about language and culture, identity. I mean, I've come on this talk show numerous times talking about how important who we are as a people is, and protecting that and ensuring our future generations have an opportunity to experience the joys that we have of being tax-free, of having a distinct language, a distinct culture, that there's a threat. There really is a threat with making Indians and making Mohawks that don't meet our criteria. And without us having some kind of a mechanism to, like when you think about Canada, how they have immigration, or the United States, look at, people fear, right? Numerous people coming in and changing the social fabric of a country, of a nation, of a community. And that's what we fear as well, because some of these people, like I said, they might be genuine, they might have real connection and ties to this community, but because of what happened as a result of the Indian Act and the colonization, they're displaced, and it's not their fault. But there's also people who, look at the Mickenack situation. They just wanted to capitalize off of Indian rights and entitlements and benefits, and with no connection, So we got to find ways to protect ourselves as a community. I don't know if people are aware of what happened to the Algonquins of Ontario. There was recently a huge land claim. And of course, Algonquins on the Quebec side, they know who their families are. But when it came time for a vote, everybody on the Ontario side who had an ancestor 8 generations away was considered Algonquin and was able to vote. And they voted away millions of acres of land for money. What's going to happen in our future with our Seigneurie of Sault Ste. Louis land claim or any other land claim that we have, nation claim, that all these people are going to say, oh, I'm a Mohawk. Are you? Genuinely? Do you know what it means? We have a lot of responsibilities. I mean, recently the Great Law reading happened in our community, and a lot of people are feeling inspired to see, you know, our history, what our ancestors laid out for us in terms of, you know, who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to govern ourselves as prescribed by the Creator. And right now we're at a crossroads in our existence, and there's a lot of work that we have ahead of us to get back to a place where we could all, you know, live in a way where we're feeling confident in who we are and where we're going. You know, there's a lot of threats out there, even with the way the environment is right now. So one of the priorities, as I mentioned, that the collective impact is about food sovereignty, knowing how to grow our own food, knowing how to sustain ourselves. I mean, we can't hunt and fish the way we used to. So looking at everything that's going on around us, and governance is a really important component. So one of my portfolios right now, it's new this term, is looking at 3 things, or 3 phases, if you will. The first one being MCK, we need to look at ourselves, who we are as an organization and who we are as the council table, you know, the leadership. There's, you know, some things that we need to do to ensure that people look at us in a way that, you know, we are doing the best for our community. We're born and raised here too. I never pledged allegiance to a Canadian flag, although people will say, you're an Indian Act band counselor. You know, you have no right and entitlement to who you are as a Haudenosaunee person. Then we have like accountability and transparency, how we connect with the people, how do we get direction from the people. So we need to find a way how MCK, and I hate to use the word chief because that's not me. I like to use Ietsénhaienhs. I mind the fire. I know the difference between what's a Royane and a Yoyane, and that's not what I am. So finding how the community wants us to be accountable and transparent in what we're doing day to day. So I have 4 portfolios that I work on. I need direction, and I need ways to engage with the community to see that they like the direction that I'm pushing our matters, because we have a lot going on in this community. There's so much, you know. As you mentioned, how do you whittle 33 priorities into 6?
Yeah.
And everybody is working on areas, you know, like maybe you don't see it all the time, but there's so much work going on in this community in so many areas, but we're not all doing it collectively. And I think that's the whole premise of collective impact, that even your average community member, like, what are you doing? How are you contributing to moving Kahnawake forward? We all have a role and a responsibility.
I was talking to somebody yesterday about the food sovereignty issue and how much work she's done in the background. And, you know, for people who really feel strongly about food sovereignty, and, you know, they have all these great ideas, not knowing how much work has already been done, and how much of, you know, how much has already been put in place. So people are really excited about some of these things, not knowing, you know, that there have been a lot of people putting in a lot of hours to get us to where we are now.
Definitely. So that's phase 2, is connecting with the community, developing an accountability framework, and how, you know, what are their expectations of us as leaders and what we're doing. And the third part, phase 3, we're calling it, is engaging with families. So your whole family would be, I guess somehow we would look to have like kitchen table talk and ask about, what do you feel about governance in Kahnawake? How do you foresee the future of governance in Kahnawake? Are you comfortable with the elected system? Do we need to find a way to bridge the gap between the traditional and elected, or are we fully returning to traditional government? It's been a declaration since the year I was born, 79, that we're supposed to do this, but how? you know.
Well, we have dinner every Tuesday night at Margie's house, so feel free to stop by.
Excellent.
There's always extras.
Excellent. Is that ever a conversation?
You mean like politically?
Yeah,
like,
political governance in Kahnawake.
It's, you know what, for at least for my family, the conversations do get fairly political in terms of even, you know, what each person's sort of vision of what things are, and on the other side of where things came from, right? So, you know, and I think each family probably has their own flair. So one conversation in one house is not going to be the same at the next, right? You know, but I think it's interesting because people do want to have their say. They do want to participate, but, you know, getting back to what we started the show with, you know, sometimes you just don't have time. Really wanted to drop in at Collective Impact. I have no idea if I'll be able to at all. Right. Just logistics. Right. And I think a lot of people are in the same situation, especially when we're talking about young families. You've got kids. It takes more than one job
for sure
to keep your head over water these days, you know. So maybe you do have more than two parents in the house, but you can't just survive off of one income, right? So everybody's hustling, which means that these types of things unfortunately get pushed to the side.
Yeah, and that's why we want to go to people. We want to go where the people are. We want to have these, like we said, kitchen table talks. You go to where the families are and start to engage about, you know, where do they see Kahnawake today? Where do you see it in the future? Because, you know, we have all these up and coming families and young kids, and what is the legacy that we're going to leave for them? And I feel like right now, you know, at a leadership level, we're dysfunctional, you know, because we're not at the place where we want to be, and it's not our fault. You know, we have to realize the colonial impacts that things have had on us. And there's definitely, I would say, a huge shift going on generationally with people who are younger than me, and maybe it's because of social media, where people just have more access to concepts to do with things like colonialism, you know, where before, you know, people might have never heard the word, maybe kind of understanding what it was in their lives, but there's just so much more access to these ideas of how we're set up socially, often in ways that don't benefit us. And I find a lot of younger people are a lot more aware of that and consciously trying to make some changes. And a lot more open to culture, right? So many young people are just so enthusiastic about learning language. And, you know, I keep telling people I had the good fortune of working in the schools last year and walking through the halls of survival school and, you know, just walking through and hearing youth listening to social songs on their phones, watching videos that were culturally relevant on their phones. And this is during their break time. This is what they want. It's what they genuinely want. And I think being open to, you know, getting those discussions going is a great way to just start, you know, creating a picture of where the community is going. And we do have a shared community vision statement, right? In 2029, you know, this is where the community is supposed to be. So our time is ticking. We have 10 years or 9, I guess now, but, you know, those things are happening, whether people believe it or not. Like, you could see the momentum, as you said, whether it's a cultural and a language resurgence, and people want to learn more. We just had a great law reading here. But the thing I took out of that the most is about how to be with one another, how to be respectful of people's choices, their beliefs, you know, how to, I guess, find that way to be peaceful with each other again, regardless if you have a difference of opinion, a difference of religion or whatever, because we all have to realize that the reality we're in is nobody's fault. You know, it's a symptom of the evolution, but we're in control of our future and where we're going to go. So I think the more that people engage in the conversations, in the dialogue, whether it be collective impact or having, you know, a 5-year community strategic plan, everybody has a role to play in where we're going. And it's as I mentioned, I think it's a beautiful time in our existence, and that we're at a crossroads and we're in control of our destiny, and there's a lot of positive and good things happening in the community. So yeah, I'm looking forward to engaging with community on many more facets of where we're going.
Well, I'm glad we got to end on an optimistic note. I want to thank you for coming in, Gus. It was always a pleasure to have you in. And that's it, everybody. That's it for our show today. Thank you for tuning in to K103.7's Tetewathá talk show.